For years, every month began with hope and ended with heartbreak. After countless doctor appointments, treatments, prayers, and tears, I found myself sitting alone in a parking lot, asking God a question I never thought I would ask. How much longer can I keep doing this?
Welcome back to God Showed Up Stories. Tonight's story is for anyone carrying a prayer that feels unanswered. The people waiting. The people hopping. The people trying to trust God while living through disappointment after disappointment. Maybe your struggle isn't infertility. Maybe it's something else entirely. But if you've ever wondered why a deeply personal prayer seems to remain unanswered, this story is for you. If you've ever felt exhausted from hopping, if you've ever questioned your worth because life wasn't unfolding the way you expected, if you've ever struggled to understand God's timing, you're not alone. Before we begin, take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who may need encouragement tonight. And comment below. What prayer are you still trusting God with today? Never forget this. Faith is not only believing when the answer arrives. Sometimes faith is continuing to trust while you're still waiting. All right, let's get into tonight's story.
When my husband and I got married, we assumed starting a family would happen naturally. That's what everyone told us. You'll be announcing a pregnancy before you know it. Enjoy your freedom now. Everything happens so fast. At first, we believed them. We talked about baby names, dreamed about future birthdays, imagined family vacations and bedtime stories. We pictured what life would look like a few years down the road. Then months passed. Nothing happened. At first, I wasn't worried. Everyone said it could take time. So, we waited, and hoped, and prayed. Then more months passed. Then a year. Then another. Suddenly, something that once felt exciting began feeling heavy. Doctor appointments became routine. Blood work, testing, procedures, treatments, waiting rooms, more waiting. Our lives slowly became organized around appointments and results. Hope became tied to calendars, to numbers, to phone calls, to dates circled on schedules. Every month followed the same emotional cycle. Hope, anticipation, prayer, disappointment, repeat. At first, I handled it fairly well, or at least I pretended to. But over time, each negative test result felt like a fresh loss. Not because I was losing something I had, because I was losing something I had imagined. A future I kept believing was just around the corner. The hardest part wasn't the treatments. It wasn't the appointments. It wasn't even the uncertainty. The hardest part was watching life continue for everyone else. Pregnancy announcements filled social media. Friends hosted baby showers. Co-workers shared ultrasound photos. Family members celebrated growing families. And every time, I smiled. I congratulated them. I bought gifts. I attended celebrations. But privately, I cried. Not because I wasn't happy for them. I truly was. But every celebration reminded me of something I still didn't have. Eventually, the disappointment began affecting everything, including my marriage. My husband and I loved each other deeply, but pain has a way of creating distance when people don't know how to talk about it. Sometimes we avoided the topic altogether. Other times, we argued about things that weren't really the problem. We were both hurting. We were both scared. And neither of us knew how to fix something we couldn't control. I also began questioning myself, my worth, my identity, my value as a woman. Even though I knew better, even though I knew my value wasn't tied to becoming a mother, the disappointment whispered lies anyway. Slowly, my faith became complicated. I still believed in God. I still prayed. I still attended church, but my prayers started sounding different. Less confident, more confused. I wasn't angry with God. I was hurt, and I didn't understand. Why would God place such a deep desire in my heart and then remain silent? Why did it seem so easy for some people and so impossible for others? Why did every door seem to stay closed? One afternoon, after receiving another disappointing update from a fertility specialist, I sat alone in my car. The engine wasn't running. The radio was off. I just sat there, staring through the windshield, unable to drive home, unable to move, unable to pretend I was okay anymore. For the first time, I admitted the truth. I was exhausted. Not physically, emotionally, mentally, spiritually. I was tired of hoping, tired of waiting, tired of pretending disappointment didn't hurt. The tears came without warning, and sitting there alone, I quietly prayed. Not a polished prayer, not a faith-filled prayer, just an honest one. God, I don't know how much longer I can carry this. The words hung in the silence. Days passed, then weeks. Life continued. Nothing dramatically changed. Then a friend invited me to a support gathering. I almost didn't go. Honestly, I wanted to stay home. I didn't want another room full of stories that reminded me of my own pain. But something nudged me to attend. So I went. The gathering was small, simple, nothing special, just a group of people carrying different burdens. During a break, I found myself sitting beside an older woman. She had kind eyes, the kind of eyes that looked like they had seen both joy and sorrow. We started talking. At first, just small conversation. Then somehow, the discussion became deeper. Eventually, she asked me a question. How long have you been carrying this? I knew exactly what she meant. And before I realized it, I was telling her everything. The appointments, the disappointment, the grief, the questions, the exhaustion, the fear that maybe life would never look the way I had imagined. She listened carefully, without interrupting, without offering quick answers, without trying to fix anything. And when I finished, she nodded slowly. Then she shared her own story, a story filled with years of waiting, years of unanswered prayers, years of believing life would unfold one way and discovering it unfolded another. Her story wasn't identical to mine, but her pain felt familiar, and for the first time, in a very long time, I felt understood. As she spoke, I couldn't shake the feeling that God had placed me in that chair beside her for a reason. She didn't offer cliches. She didn't tell me everything would work out exactly the way I hoped. She didn't promise a miracle. Instead, she offered something far more valuable: honesty, grace, understanding. She told me about years of prayers that seemed unanswered, dreams that never unfolded the way she expected, plans that changed, doors that stayed closed. I listened carefully, because for the first time in a very long time, I was hearing someone speak openly about disappointment without losing hope. Then she said something that stopped me. One of the hardest lessons I ever learned, she said softly, was realizing that God was still good even when I didn't understand what he was doing. I looked down at my hands, because deep inside, that was exactly what I had been struggling with. Not whether God existed, not whether God loved me, but whether I could trust him when life wasn't unfolding the way I believed it should. The woman continued. For years, I believed peace would come when I finally got the answer I wanted. She smiled gently, but peace didn't come from certainty. She paused. Peace came when I stopped making my future the condition for my joy. Those words stayed with me long after the meeting ended, long after I drove home, long after the conversation was over, because I realized how much of my life had become trapped inside one outcome. One dream, one expectation. I had unknowingly put my entire future on hold. I told myself I would be happy later. I would feel complete later. I would finally have peace later. When the prayer was answered, when the waiting ended, when life looked the way I imagined. But what if God was inviting me to live now? What if joy wasn't something I had to postpone? What if purpose still existed in the middle of uncertainty? Over the following months, something slowly began changing inside me. Not overnight, not dramatically, but steadily. My husband and I started having more honest conversations, real conversations, the kind we had avoided for years because they hurt too much. Instead of pretending to be strong all the time, we allowed ourselves to be vulnerable. We shared fears, disappointments, questions, and somehow, that honesty brought us closer together. For so long, Infertility had felt like something happening to us. Now we began facing it together, as partners, as a team, as husband and wife, not as two people carrying separate burdens. I also started rediscovering parts of myself I had neglected, parts of my identity that existed outside of one dream. I began volunteering again, spending time with friends, pursuing interests I had forgotten, investing in relationships, laughing more, living more. The desire to become a mother never disappeared. The grief didn't magically vanish, but it stopped defining every part of who I was. For the first time in years, I could imagine a meaningful future, even if I didn't know exactly what it would look like. And, strangely enough, that realization brought freedom. The freedom wasn't found in having answers. It was found in releasing the need to control the outcome. New possibilities slowly began appearing, unexpected opportunities, new friendships, different ways of helping others, different ways of nurturing, encouraging, and serving people around me. Life wasn't becoming smaller. It was becoming bigger than the single path I had spent years focusing on. One evening, months after that conversation, I found myself sitting quietly on our porch, watching the sunset. Nothing had dramatically changed. There was no miraculous ending, no sudden resolution, no neat conclusion. But something inside me was different. The anxiety wasn't controlling me anymore. The disappointment wasn't defining me anymore. And for the first time in a very long time, I felt hope. Not hope rooted in certainty. Hope rooted in trust. Trust that God was still writing my story. Trust that purpose existed, even in the waiting. Trust that unanswered questions did not mean I had been forgotten. Looking back now, I realize God showed up that season in a way I never expected. Not through dramatic miracles, not through immediate answers, but through a conversation, through understanding, through wisdom shared by someone who had walked through her own season of waiting, and through the quiet reminder that faith isn't always believing after you receive the answer. Sometimes faith is learning to trust God while you're still waiting.
If this story touched your heart today, comment below. God is with me in the waiting. And if you're carrying an unanswered prayer right now, remember this. Your worth is not determined by the outcome you're waiting for. Your value is not measured by whether life unfolds according to your timeline. And God's presence is not proven only by answered prayers. Sometimes His presence is found in the strength He gives us to keep moving forward. Keep hopping. Keep trusting. Keep believing that your story is not over. Take a moment to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share this story with someone who may need encouragement tonight. Thank you for spending this time with God Showed Up Stories. And always remember, God always shows up right on time.